Hey guys, it's story time again. Once in a while I sit down and I just talk to you about some interesting stories or failures I encountered throughout my career, and today is one of those days. You always seem to enjoy them. I enjoy them, especially because I don't have to edit anything because there's hardly any b-roll. So why not have another story for you? And today's story is kinda interesting. I bet you sat down, you saw the thumbnail, you saw the title, and you were like, what the f***? Why would he do this? This is not cool. Because maybe it has happened to you. Because I sure know that it has happened to me. And poaching somebody else's client is never cool. So before I get into the story, let me actually give you my stance on the entire situation. I don't know if you've ever been there. You got a job, but you need more people. And this could be a second AC, a second shooter, or even behind the scenes. So you hire them, and on the day of the shoot, they start advertising for themselves in front of your client. And in the worst case scenario, a couple of weeks later, you actually see them on Instagram shooting something for your client. It actually happened to me a couple times, usually by just undercutting my prices a lot, and I think that's not cool. I think that if you're being hired for somebody else and you're on set, you're running under their flag. There's no way you should advertise for yourself, and even if the client reaches out to you afterwards because maybe they like you very much, you should always clear this with the person and the filmmaker that brought you on set because, well, it's their client, and again, it's not for you to actually advertise for yourself. I think there's also exceptions to the rule because maybe you hire a specialist like a sound engineer and then the client actually needs somebody in sound and you yourself have nothing to do with sound, and then they start working for them just in purely sound department, which is probably okay. But if you hire another filmmaker that does roughly the same things that you do and then they advertise in front of the client, I don't think that's cool. So now you might be thinking, how did I actually end up poaching a client from another filmmaker? So let me start from the beginning. One day, an acquaintance of mine reached out on Instagram and she told me that she has a friend or also somebody that she knows and he needs another filmmaker. And that was on really short notice. So I reached out to him and I told him, yes, I'm available. So the next weekend I was there, camera in hand, shooting something for one of his clients. And we started shooting and everything was somewhat okay. I felt like the guy was a little weird. It was not my type of person, but I wasn't really judging. He was just overall giving me weird vibes, but not necessarily bad vibes. So on the day of the shoot, he was there as the director as well as a photographer. It wasn't necessarily a filmmaker, he just got the client and the gig and they needed videos as well as pictures. I assume he'd done photography for them, but now they wanted video as well, so that's why he needed a filmmaker. So that's why he hired me. He also brought an assistant for me to actually help me on my shoots, and again, nice guy, but not necessarily my cup of tea. As well as he didn't really know what he was doing and he wasn't really great to work with. But again, let's put this aside. The first day of shooting came and it actually went quite okay. I think he demanded a little bit more than I wanted him to. I think we agreed upon 8 hours, but then it ended up being 10 hours and he was a little iffy on the overtime, etc. But again, it was really short notice and we haven't really discussed anything in particular when it came to overtime. But he was also still being a little weird. For example, when lunchtime came around, the entire crew, the client and all of the marketing department and the assistant, we all went to the restaurant and ate together, and he ate his own food in his car and just didn't join. So that was kind of weird. And I also felt a little bit uneasy sometimes because when he was talking to the marketing department, he always knew everything better and he kind of cut them off. But really nothing bad. After that first day of shooting, we had multiple shooting days left, and he also started to include me into all the emails that he wrote with the client, which I found kind of weird because I felt like I have nothing to do with all the organizational stuff, so why am I in there? But, well, I just kept reading it, but never really replying anything. I wasn't really paying too much attention, but they were just talking about the next dates, and that actually did concern me. And then all of a sudden he told me like, okay, there's no shoot next week, whatever. So I went on another job for another client in a different country. And I kind of found it weird because they were talking to each other, and the way that I understood the emails, I felt like they already agreed upon next weekend. But apparently he assured me, no, there was a misunderstanding. That's not gonna happen. So I went on this other job, and then all of a sudden he called me on day 2 of the shoot. Oh no, they want to sue me. We didn't show up. Can you come here? And I was like, I'm in a different country on a different job, so no, I can't be there. I could be there tomorrow if I really hurry up. Like, yeah, maybe we can just shoot as much on the day 2 because they already had all the models and the actors and all the rooms reserved and yada yada yada. So there was a misunderstanding, although I kind of felt like there wasn't. He was blaming the client, and I was reading the emails because I was CC'd in it, and I felt like it was his fault and not the client's fault. But he said that the client was really difficult, etc., etc. So whatever, I showed up the day after, really short notice, drove back, and then we started shooting again. On that day, you could feel like there was a lot of tension between him and the client. And whenever they said something, he was getting really unfriendly, and it actually started to annoy me because I was there by association with him, although I didn't really know him. And I really kind of liked the client and all the people that I worked with. But him, I felt like he was out of line here and there. And I really didn't appreciate this. It also went a little further sometimes, where he made some old school, sexist, unnecessary remarks. Nothing too crass, but we were filming a little boy smelling on flowers, for example. And then he replaced the boy with a girl and said that boys don't do this, so we need to film a girl. And he had multiple remarks like this throughout the shoot, which really made me feel uncomfortable. And I actually said something a couple of times, and you could also feel like the client was annoyed and also a little uncomfortable. But again, it wasn't anything major at this point. After the second day of shooting, I really felt like this is not going to be a fun job, but I also pride myself of being really reliable, so I decided to see it through. So now the third day of shooting came around. I drove an hour to the location. It was 7 a.m. I showed up and the client asked me, so where's the rest of the crew? And I was like, I don't know. That's pretty much it. And apparently the guy that hired me, he was supposed to shoot some 360 photography or even let the drone fly, and he had his own drone, but he just didn't show up. I think he just texted at 4 a.m. and said, hey, I'm not coming. He didn't tell me, he just told the client. So now there was a lot of stuff scheduled that I couldn't do because I didn't know that he wasn't coming, and I didn't have a drone with me. And I also don't have any equipment for doing 360 photography. And that really put the client over the edge. They were pissed. They didn't really want to work with him anymore because he wasn't reliable enough. And again, with all the other things. And since I was CC'd in all of these emails, they actually had my signature in there. They went to my website, they saw all the stuff that I've done before, and then they reached out to me and asked, hey, we looked at your stuff. Can you do the rest of the shoot by yourself or with your own crew? Because we've seen that you do all the stuff and we don't even know why we need him, because he didn't really contribute all that much and I was doing most of the stuff. And I think he also sent them a pre-edited version of the first day of shooting and they didn't like it at all. And then they went to my website and they liked the stuff much, much better. So I was in a really weird situation right now. So after the client talked to the guy, naturally I reached out to him as well, and I just wanted to have an open discussion. And he blamed the client for it, and he was obviously not happy, but I think you could also see that he bit off a lot more that he could chew because the job was just entirely too big for him. And overall, I also think that he didn't really want to work with them anymore. Then the client asked me if I could just use the footage that we already shot and edit this into new versions. Obviously I couldn't, and I told them that because I wasn't hired by the client, but I was hired by him. So whatever footage I shot is his and not the client's. From this point onwards, there was a lot of drama in the background. I think the client even got their lawyers involved, and it was really close to, I think, going to court, but then he just kind of gave up the last minute because he didn't want to go to court. So he just gave them the footage. I think they paid for it, and then they canceled the contract and he was out of it. I had an agreement with him that I gave him a bit of a commission for the first contract that I will actually sign with the client as a finder's fee, and that was pretty much it. So now all the footage that I shot with my cameras I actually used for the clients. I didn't really want to use anything that he already shot or even edited, so that we just start from scratch. And I made a new contract with the client over the same volume or even more, I think. And then we just saw this through over the next year or a year and a half. And fun fact, I still have this client today, and this is pretty much one of the only clients that I do full service production for these days, and we've been working with them for about 6 years, I think. So like I said, it was kind of a weird situation because I didn't really want to work with him anymore. The client didn't really want to work with him anymore, but I was hired by him. I couldn't just go above their head. And the uncomfortable situation sometimes was that they made this kind of clear before they even talked to him. So we were on set and they were so annoyed by him that they kind of asked me like, hey, so you do filmmaking, so could you do this by yourself? And I was like, yeah, but he wasn't even there, remember? Because he just didn't show up this one day. So they kind of tried to poach me away from him without actually telling him. And that really made me uncomfortable. I think I handled this really professionally. And I kind of always told them that, hey, I'm staying out of this. It's his job. Technically, I could do it, but I'm not the person you need to talk to. You need to talk to him. You need to just discuss this before, and then we can start a discussion with me. So now I want to know from you guys. So let me know down in the comments below. How would you have handled the situation if you were in my shoes? And have you ever hired somebody and then they started trying to poach your client in front of you? I hope you liked this video, and if you did, then please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more because there will be cool behind the scenes, reviews, etc. on my channel in the very near future. And I hope to see you on the next one.